There is a particular kind of silence that falls over a small group of soldiers when the horizon fills with the enemy, a moment when every man does the same arithmetic in his head, and every man arrives at the same impossible answer. There are too many of them. There are too few of us. We are not going to win this. And then, instead of running, they pick up their weapons and stay. History is full of battles won by the bigger army. This is not a video about those. This is a video about the other kind. The stands that should have ended in seconds and lasted for hours. The handfuls of men who looked at an army and decided that the ground behind them was worth dying on. Today we are counting down 5 of the greatest last stands in history, where a tiny force held back an army, and where losing sometimes mattered more than winning ever could. A quick and honest warning before we begin. Some of these stories are pure, well-documented history, recorded in official reports and the letters of the men who were there. Others have been polished for a century or more by the armies and nations that treasure them, until it is hard to know exactly where the facts end and the legend begins. When a detail is disputed, we will say so. Because the truth of these stands is remarkable enough on its own, and it does not need decorating. We are counting down from 5 to 1 and saving the most famous stand of all for last. Let us begin. Number 5, a field in Mexico and 65 men who would not surrender. It is the 30th of April, 1863. A company of the French Foreign Legion, 65 soldiers in all, is marching through the dry scrubland of eastern Mexico, guarding the road that supplies a French army besieging the city of Puebla. The Legion is a strange and formidable thing, an army of foreigners, Germans, Poles, Swiss, Italians, Belgians, men who enlisted in France under any name they chose. Leading them this morning is Captain Jean d'Anjou, an officer with a hand made of carved wood, the real one lost years earlier when a musket exploded in his grip. Then the horizon moves. Mexican forces, cavalry and infantry together, numbering close to 2,000 men, are bearing down on them. d'Anjou forms his men into a tight square and fights his way to a ruined farmhouse, the Hacienda Camerone. But in the chaos, his mules bolt, carrying away the company's food, water, and spare ammunition. 65 men, behind a broken wall, in the baking heat, with no water and about 60 rounds each. What would you do? Understand first why they were even there. The Legion had drawn the worst job in the war, guarding a stretch of road through the hot coastal country where a disease no one yet understood, yellow fever carried by mosquitoes, was killing men in their barracks faster than any enemy. The company was so thin and so many of its officers were sick that d'Anjou, an administrator who did not have to be in the field at all, took command of the patrol himself. So this was already a unit that had been bleeding for weeks before it ever saw the enemy. They were offered the chance to surrender, and according to the survivors, Captain d'Anjou went from man to man and had each of them swear an oath on his wooden hand that they would fight to the end. Whether the scene was quite that clean, we cannot be certain. What is certain is this: they were offered surrender 3 times that day, and 3 times they refused. They held that farmyard for most of the day. d'Anjou was shot through the chest and killed by late morning. The officers who took over from him died one by one. By 6 in the evening, there were just 5 men left standing, each with a single bullet. So they fired their last shots together and charged the entire enemy force with bayonets. When it was over, the Mexican commander is said to have looked at the last survivors and declared that one could refuse nothing to men like these. Captain d'Anjou's wooden hand was left in the dust of that farmyard. Today it is the most sacred relic of the French Foreign Legion, carried on parade every year on this date. They lost the battle in an afternoon. They won a place in their army's heart forever. Number 4, a stone outpost on a mountain frontier, and 21 men against thousands. Now we travel to the northwest frontier of British India, to a rocky ridge in what is today Pakistan, on the 12th of September, 1897. Perched between 2 forts is a small signaling post called Saragarhi. Its only job to relay messages by heliograph, a device that flashes sunlight off a mirror in code, between the larger forts on either side. Manning it are 21 soldiers of the 36th Sikh Regiment of the British Indian Army, under a havildar, a sergeant, named Ishar Singh. On this morning, a vast force of Afghan and Pashtun tribesmen, estimated at somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 strong, sweeps down on the post, aiming to wipe it out and cut the link between the forts. 21 men, thousands of attackers, and no possibility of rescue arriving in time. How long would you expect 21 men to last? The answer is most of a day, and the reason we know the story in such detail is one of the most extraordinary things about it. From inside the post, a soldier named Gurmukh Singh worked the heliograph, flashing a running account of the battle back to the fort as it happened, message after message, calmly reporting the size of the enemy and asking for orders while thousands of tribesmen closed in around him. The commander at the fort flashed back that no relief could reach them in time. The 21 men understood exactly what that meant, and they chose to hold anyway. The Sikhs poured fire into the attackers, beating back charge after charge, the tribesmen falling in heaps against the wall. Twice the attackers tried to trick them out with offers of safe passage and wealth. Twice they were ignored. When the tribesmen finally breached the wall, Ishar Singh is said to have ordered his men back to an inner defense while he held the breach himself to buy them time. One by one, the defenders fell, until only Gurmukh Singh, the signaller, was left. He flashed one final message asking permission to stop signaling and take up his rifle. Permission granted. Then he shut down the heliograph, picked up his weapon, and fought until the enemy set the post ablaze around him. All 21 died. But they had held long enough, and killed enough, to blunt the whole assault, and every one of them was posthumously awarded the highest gallantry honor then available to an Indian soldier. To this day, the Sikh regiment remembers them every year. 21 names, still read aloud, more than a century later. Number 3. A mission station in Africa and 150 men who built a fort out of food. We are in southern Africa now, on the 22nd of January, 1879, at a river crossing called Rorkes Drift. It is a sleepy supply depot with a small hospital, and then 2 riders come galloping in with catastrophic news. 10 miles away, that very morning, a British army column has been annihilated at a place called Isandlwana. Around 1,300 men, dead in a few hours, cut down by a Zulu army, using a tactic called the Horns of the Buffalo, sweeping wide around the flanks to encircle and destroy. And now that Zulu Reserve, 3,000 to 4,000 warriors, is heading straight for Rorkes Drift. Standing in its path are about 150 men, more than 30 of them sick in the hospital and unable to stand. The sane option is to run. So why did they stay? Because a supply officer named James Dalton did the math out loud. Men with fever cannot outrun a Zulu regiment across open country. Run, and you die strung out on the road. Stay, and you at least have walls. So they built them, frantically, out of what they had, which was food. 200-pound sacks of maize and heavy wooden biscuit boxes, stacked chest-high into a rampart linking the storehouse and the hospital. For 11 hours through the night, they fought across that wall of groceries, close enough to grab the enemy's spears with their bare hands, close enough to hear the men on the other side breathing between the charges. And there was a cruel twist. Overlooking the station was a rocky hill, and Zulu marksmen climbed it and fired down into the yard using rifles they had taken that very morning from the British dead at Isandlwana. The men killed in the morning were, in a sense, still shooting at the men trying to survive the evening. The hospital caught fire with the sick still inside, and privates hacked through the interior walls with a pickaxe to drag the patients out room by room, holding a doorway with a bayonet in one hand while the other man dug through the mud brick as the burning roof came down around them. When dawn came, 17 defenders were dead, but the post had held. For the defense of that farmyard, 11 Victoria Crosses were awarded, the most ever given for a single action in British history, a number never matched before or since. A wall of food, held by 150 men against an army. Number 2, a mission fort in Texas, and the defenders who bought a revolution with their lives. It is February 1836. Texas is in revolt against the government of Mexico, and in the town of San Antonio, a few hundred Texian rebels have occupied an old crumbling mission compound called the Alamo. Their numbers are small, somewhere around 200 defenders. Among them are some names that would become legend: the commander William Travis, the famous knife fighter Jim Bowie, lying sick on a cot, and the frontiersman and former Congressman Davy Crockett. Marching on them is the Mexican president and General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, at the head of an army many times their size, well over 1,000 men and growing. Santa Anna raises a blood-red flag over the town, the signal that no surrender will be accepted and no prisoners taken. Trapped, outnumbered, and told plainly that they will be given no mercy. Do you hold, or do you run while you still can? They held for 13 days of siege, of Mexican artillery pounding the old mission walls, of cold nights and dwindling hope, of watching the enemy lines grow thicker as reinforcements arrived, and knowing that their own promised help never would. Travis sent out rider after rider carrying desperate pleas for reinforcement, and one letter in particular still stuns people who read it, addressed to the people of Texas and all Americans, vowing that he would never surrender or retreat, and signing it, victory or death. There is a beloved legend that Travis drew a line in the sand with his sword and invited every man willing to die to step across it, and that all but one did. Historians cannot confirm that the line was ever drawn, and it may be a story added later. What is not in doubt is that almost none of them left. Before dawn on the 13th day, in the cold dark of the 6th of March, Santa Anna's buglers sounded the attack, and his army stormed the walls from every side at once. The defenders, spread thin across a perimeter far too long for their numbers, fired their cannon into the massed columns, and then fought hand to hand as the Mexican soldiers poured over the walls. The fighting was savage and short, room by room, in the smoke and the dark, and by sunrise nearly every defender was dead. Travis was killed early, at his post on the wall. Bowie, it is said, died on his sickbed with weapons in his hands. How Crockett met his end is still argued over by historians to this day, and we may never know for certain. Santa Anna had his victory, but it cost him time he could not spare, and it handed his enemies something priceless, a rallying cry. Weeks later, the Texian army under Sam Houston charged the Mexican forces screaming, "Remember the Alamo," and won Texas its independence in a battle that lasted 18 minutes. The men in the mission lost everything. In losing, they lit the fuse that won the war. And now, number 1, the most famous last stand in all of history, a narrow pass between the mountains and the sea, and the men who taught the world that free men could be worth more than a king's endless army. It is 480 BC. The Persian Empire, the greatest power the world has ever seen, has poured into Greece under its king of kings, Xerxes, with an army so vast that ancient writers claimed it drank rivers dry. Modern historians put it somewhere between 70,000 and 300,000 men. Standing in its path, at a coastal choke point called Thermopylae, the Hot Gates, is a Greek force of around 7,000, led by the Spartan king Leonidas and his personal guard of 300 elite Spartan warriors. And here is the first correction to the legend. It was never only 300. But those 300 were men bred for war from the age of 7, taught that retreat was worse than death. When a Persian envoy demanded they lay down their arms, Leonidas is said to have answered with 2 words, "Come and take them." For 2 days, the impossible happened. The genius of the position was the ground itself. Funneled into a gap so narrow that Persia's vast numbers meant nothing, only a few dozen attackers could come forward at a time, straight into a wall of overlapping bronze shields and long jabbing spears. The Greeks cut down wave after wave. When Xerxes sent forward his elite bodyguard, the 10,000 so-called immortals, the finest soldiers in his entire empire, they died on the same spears as everyone else. Herodotus tells us Xerxes leapt from his throne 3 times in fear for his army, watching the most powerful force on earth break itself against a doorway of rock. And then came the betrayal that the legend often forgets. A local Greek named Ephialtes, hoping for reward, showed the Persians a hidden mountain path that led around behind the Greek position. Encircled now, and knowing the pass was lost, Leonidas made his choice. He dismissed the bulk of the Greek army to fight another day, and stayed to hold the pass with his 300 Spartans and around 1,000 others who refused to leave. They fought until their spears shattered, then with swords, and when the swords broke, the historian Herodotus tells us, with hands and teeth, every last one of them died. Athens was burned. By every measure of the battlefield, they lost. So why do we still speak their names 2,500 years later? Because those 3 days bought the other Greek cities the time to prepare, and just weeks later they shattered the Persian navy at Salamis, and the year after that, destroyed the Persian army for good at Plataea. Over the graves at Thermopylae, the Greeks carved a line that has never been bettered. Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie. Not a boast, a promise kept. So there they are, 5 last stands across 2,500 years on 4 different continents. 65 legionnaires in a Mexican farmyard, 21 Sikhs on a mountain ridge, 150 men behind a wall of food, 200 rebels in a Texas mission, and a few thousand Greeks in a narrow pass. Notice something they all share. Every single one of them, in the plain accounting of the battlefield, was a defeat. The legionnaires were wiped out, Saragarhi fell, the Alamo was overrun, Thermopylae was lost. And yet we remember them, we honor them, we still read their names aloud. In a way, we never remember the vast armies that crushed them. Why? Because a last stand is never really about the ground. It is about the choice to stand when standing is hopeless, to buy time for others with the only currency you have left, to keep a promise to the man beside you when running was allowed and no one would have blamed you. That is the thing that outlives the battle. Armies win wars. But it is the men who stayed, against all sense and all hope, who end up winning something the winners almost never do. They win the memory of the world. And now, over to you. Which last stand belongs on this list that we did not include? Tell us in the comments, and we will see you in the next one.